As image bearers of God, humanity was created to live in community. The church is in its greatest expression of love when we live in close proximity with each other as a community that gathers around the person of Jesus. Discipleship happens best in the context of relationships as we invite, invest, and inspire one another.
Talk about cultivating community, and we would actually take some challenges and encourage you guys to take some risk in this. And here's the thing is, as well, you need to know something about my leadership of all of our staff. There's this really great passage in the Bible. It's in the book of James where it says, don't just be hearers of the word, but doers of the word. And so we love to push and challenge us. How many of you have ever been to the gym? Imagine if you go to the gym and don't have to raise your hand because that would be embarrassing. Yeah, some of you, we know, all right. But just imagine with me for a moment, if you went to and you hired a trainer and you went to this trainer and you said, hey, listen, I want to get in the best shape that I can. So help me with my nutrition, help me with my workout, help me with that. And so you go to this and this trainer, you show up the first day and the trainer just, here's their advice. Do whatever you want. Eat whatever you want. See all the equipment in here? Do whatever you want with it. We've all seen videos of those people. You know what I'm talking about. So what's funny is this, when you look to your spiritual coaches, your pastors and leaders at your church, I hope you would, at least today, even if this is uncomfortable and awkward and you're like, that's not what I want to do today, at least you would go, wow, our leaders really believe in leading us and coaching us to do the right things. They're not leaders that just settle for comfort, but they really care about our spiritual growth. And so we talk about cultivating community. We know that for some of us, that's easy. Like in our family, I'm the extrovert. And then the rest are introverts. And so we've learned in our family that I can be the annoying one, all right? So we just give permission for that and grace for that. But we understand that like all of us have different personalities, different backgrounds of going through church. Some of us, community was easy. Some of us, it was hard. We were wounded. We understand all the complexities that go into the dynamics of this thing called relationships. And we know that there's a mixed bag of that. So I just this morning want to say thank you. You know what our prayer was this morning? Our prayer was that the Holy Spirit would create divine appointments. You know, we've done this over the years, for several years. We've broken us into groups on Sunday morning just to kind of change that paradigm of that church isn't just a meeting you go to, but it's a family you're a part of. And so sometimes we have to lead moments like this to help us grow in that, practice that. And we believe that our prayer this morning is, Holy Spirit, would you navigate conversations? Every time we've done this, here's what's happened. It started awkward like it just did. And by the end of the service, we would always hear man, I came in, I was feeling lonely and discouraged. I met somebody and I didn't want to at first. We hear that. People say all the time, man, I came into it kind of awkward, but I'm so glad that I did that. So we really believe that God's going to speak in this time. You know, we've been talking out of this idea of cultivating discipleship. Discipleship happens best in the context of relationships. We all know that. You grow, that your care, that the encouragement you get, we all need to be together. If anything, what if this looked like the church right now? That we're coming together, we're not drifting apart. That we turn in circles, metaphorically even outside of this church, Grace, and we actually engage with people and we actually get to know people who might look like us and they sometimes don't look like us and sometimes they think differently than us. And we're really in this place where Jesus is the center. He's what unifies us. He brings us together because in him, when it's all about Jesus, guess what? There's no divisiveness because it really is about setting aside me and letting him be the center of that. There is no rich, there is no poor, there is no black, there is no white, there is no slave, there is no free. As Paul tells us, that there's no male, there's no female. It's amazing that when Jesus is the center, how he can take the most opposite of people and bring them together in community. That's a miracle that this world needs to see. And so we get to model that and step into that. And hopefully we're leading not just us in this, we're actually leading culture and society. What does it look like to be in community where Jesus is at the center of that? Now, when we talk about friendship, here's the interesting thing. Because we say that discipleship is friendship with purpose. I was talking with a friend here last week, and I was saying that we were going to do this. And we were kind of waiting to see how many people were going to show up today as we announced this over the last several weeks. So you all get an A+ for showing up. So just give yourself a round of applause. Some of you are like, we didn't know, we just showed up. But that's okay, you get the A+ too. And I was talking with this friend in the lobby last week, and she said, it's great you've been talking about friendship with purpose. That's what discipleship is. She goes, you know what would be great? And she wasn't telling me I needed to preach on this. Actually, she was just making a comment. I actually ran with it because I felt like it so synced up with what we're doing today. She said, how many people actually need to be taught how to be a good friend? Like friendship is a word we use all the time since you were a kid. I hope you make friends, and I made a new friend, or I was hurt, all these things about friends. But when was the church actually taught people from the Bible, like how do we actually be good friends? If you're pushing us into discipleship is the context of friendship. Next week, when we meet in the homes, we'll talk about discipleship and communities in the context of family. And so how do we define what is friendship? So today I'm gonna unpack some scripture, and we're gonna practice what does that mean to be actually a good friend, either the person across from you that you just met, or really the friends in your life. What does it mean to be a good friend? But before we go further, we have to show you guys some pictures of some famous friends that you might be familiar with. So let's just look up at the screen here for a second, some friends that you guys might relate to. And what's interesting is some of these friends accomplish great things together. How about the next picture? For some of you, I asked for advice from others, and so I like this picture here because it just shows these ladies, different ages, all of that. I've still yet to see personally still Magnolias, but I hear it's a good movie. But here's the next one. Look at this one. Famous friends in Hollywood. Let me give you another one. So this goes back to some of us. Is that your favorite, Matt Taylor? How about this next one? We all know this one. And then maybe one of my favorites is this last one. You actually, if you think about it, there's a theology of friendship in the Bible. Let me just unpack a few verses, and then we'll get to a time where we can discuss some things together. Think of Jesus. He set the standard of what friendship is like. In fact, let me just read a couple verses to you. I love this. In Matthew chapter 11, verse 19, this is Jesus, but I want you to think of Jesus as like the Son of God, God in the flesh. Sometimes we think of Jesus as just, he was another, he walked as a human being. Yes, he did, but this was God in the flesh. So I just want you to imagine for a moment when God, the creator of the universe, all powerful, all knowing, omnipotent, when you think of who God is and he says, I'm going to reveal myself to you in the life of Christ, how would he come and relate to us as humanity? He chose the context of friendship. Think about that. This is what it says, and I love this, Matthew 11:19. Jesus got flack. Because as he was engaging in friendship with those that people didn't want to have associations with, Jesus got flack for that. Let me just read it to you. It says this was the critique of him. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, here is a glutton and a drunkard. He is a what? He's a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Let me just tell you something. I'm so glad that Jesus is a friend of sinners. I love that it didn't say, and Jesus came and he was a friend of self-righteous, pious people. But Jesus is like, no, I came to hang with you. I want to be your friend. Maybe you think you're a person here going, could I ever be a friend of Jesus? I've done X, Y, and Z. I've got a rap sheet. Yeah, actually, Jesus would have said, hey, want to hang? I'm going to come to your place. We're going to chill. I'm going to go to your crib. We're going to hang out. Jesus would have said that. It's in the Greek. Crib is in there somewhere. Listen to these words of Jesus in John 15. Listen to this context. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Who did Jesus lay down his life for? Let me say it this way. Jesus didn't die for a meeting. Jesus didn't die for club members. Jesus didn't die for employees. Jesus died for friends. He said it right here. This is the whole context of him saying, I'm going to lay my life down. And he says this, who is the person that lays down their life? The one who does it for a friend. And then he goes on to say this. This is where he defines the nature of the relationship. This is important for dating people too. He says this, you are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants because a servant doesn't know what his master's business is. He says, instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I've learned from my Father, I have made known to you. Even in the moment when Judas was betraying Jesus, think about this. Maybe you've never heard this before. But one of the 12 disciples, one of Jesus's friends, betrays him. Maybe you've been betrayed by a friend. And he goes out and he wants to get rich off of turning Jesus over to the authorities. And so Judas goes, he conspires, he makes a deal with the Roman authorities and the religious leaders to come and take Jesus. And so he's turning his back on Jesus. He's not a good friend. But listen to the moment that happens. This is one of the greatest moments of betrayal we ever see in the Bible. And listen to how Jesus still responds. In Matthew chapter 26, verse 49. Going at once to Jesus, Judas, who is the betrayer, he greeted him by saying, Rabbi, and he kissed him. Oh, Judas. Verse 50, Jesus replied, do what you came to do, friend. Isn't that interesting? That Jesus would still acknowledge even his betrayer as like, still going to call you my friend. Maybe you've never heard that before. But Jesus is like, listen, you're part of the club, man. Like, I'm still, in fact, I wonder if Jesus even thought that might sting a little bit. Because as you're coming to betray me, I'm still acknowledging you, not as a stranger, not as a Roman authority, not as a turncoat. I am still acknowledging you as a friend. See, when we talk about this, what does this look like then for us to break this down? Because there's this word in the Greek, it's called philo. It's where we get this word of one of the expressions of love, and it means friendship love with each other. And so I want to just share with you 3 ways that we can be intentional at being good friends. And it's actually what it's in the video you just saw earlier. It's 3 words. What do good friends do? If you want to be a good friend and you want to model your friendship after how Jesus was a friend, I'm going to give you the secret to being a good friend. 3 things. Number 1 is you have to be an inviter. You invite. Number 2 is this, you invest. And number 3 is you inspire. These are the 3 words that we use in talking about friendship with purpose. You invite, you invest, and you inspire. So let me break down the first one. What does it mean to be an inviter? And I'm just going to give you a list of things of what an inviter does. Because everybody knows this, that when you get invited to something, doesn't it feel good? When you get invited, it feels great. You love it, right? Let me show you some characteristics, we'll just put up here, of what does it mean to be an inviter, a friend who invites. Number 1, it's a friend who does this. We invite through seeing. If you're walked into a room, maybe like today, and you just go, I wonder if I'm going to be invisible. And this is what happens in churches all the time. People come in and they're like, you know what, I don't even know if they'd miss me. Well, yeah, it's hard to be seen when you're in a crowd of hundreds and sometimes thousands of people, right? But what friends do is we invite, and inviting somebody, it just literally starts with recognizing their presence. Like you're here. You know, when someone walks in, that's why I love our greeters, our hospitality team who are doing parking and welcoming. Can we just thank them for what they do? Because I know, listen, for those of you who volunteer and do that, maybe you think, and they're out there in the rain and today it was cold, listen, what their job is to do is to make sure that everybody's seen. Their job is to make sure that when people walk in and they've had the worst week of their life, or maybe they've had tragedies happen and they walk in and they think, I'm going to try church for the first time and I don't even know if I'll ever be seen. And invitation always starts with seeing somebody, recognizing that, hey, they're here. Like I notice you. Number 2 is we invite through asking. You know, sometimes an ask is like, hey, how are you doing? How's your day? You ever thought about that? Isn't it great when you have a friend that doesn't just tell you, but actually asks you things? You know, there's a saying that we've had here for a long time. I've heard it all over different places, that some people work so hard to being interesting. Welcome to TikTok. And then there are some people who want to be interested. It's not all about, hey, everybody, I showed up. I want all the attention. It's like, And a person who invites is one who takes just a little initiative to say, hey, first I notice you, but number two is like, hey, how was your day? Or how's it going? And then it can progress to certainly bigger asks that are like, hey, I would love to ask you, would you like to join us? There were some of you, even this morning, we just practiced that. You looked at each other and said, hey, you want to join our circle? Do you want to join our little crowd? What you did was you invited in. And every deep friendship, it always begins with being seen and being acknowledged and then invited in. Another one here is like you're included. We all want to be a part of something and included. And an invitation is like, hey, I'm going to invite you into my life. I'm going to invite you into something I'm going to. Number 4 is this, and I really think inviting doesn't just mean that where you're inviting into something. It also means like you're initiating. You know, when I go to my wife and I take the ownership on me, I go to her instead of us being passive aggressive and just waiting until somebody kind of, it's like if I go to her or she comes to me and says, hey, I want to be the first one to say I'm sorry. Good friends initiate that. They initiate that process. So when you say I'm inviting you, by asking for forgiveness, you're actually inviting somebody in the restoration process. Do you see how that works? And the last one here is just acknowledging. I just want to acknowledge you're here, and so I want to invite you into a space where you can be seen, you can be heard, and you can be acknowledged. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to stop talking, and we're going to let you discuss, and we're going to put a timer up for 5 minutes. That way for some of us, we're like, oh, good. It's almost down to the 30th second, right? It also helps because some of us, like me, we can talk the whole 5 minutes. Then nobody else gets a chance. So this helps everybody in the room. If we're kind of uncomfortable, if we're over talkers, we can, listen, I don't want to hog up the whole 5 minutes. So what we want to do, I'm going to put up a discussion question. And we chose a question that hopefully most of us can engage with and not quite feel too overly vulnerable. But here's the first question for you to discuss in your circles. When you were invited by someone, maybe you were invited to a party when you were a kid, maybe you were invited to a wedding, maybe you were invited to somebody's house, you fill in the blank, whatever invitation. When you were invited by someone, how did that make you feel? So here's what we do. We're going to put a timer for 5 minutes. You guys share amongst yourselves, and I'll be right back in a few. All right, I'm going to interrupt you guys for a little bit. You'll have a chance to, right? Like not enough time, right? I know. This is so good. Let me move on to our second one, and we'll get you guys talking again as well, and you can finish if you left off on something else. But we talked about inviting. The second part about being a really good intentional friend is this idea of investing. You know, when you think about investing, sometimes it helps understand what the opposite of investing is, which is divesting. And we all know this, that there's kind of two types of people in the world, those who really pour life into you, and then there's those that just suck life away from you, right? We all know that. And sometimes in friendship, it's a mix, different times of seasons you're going through. But this idea of what does it mean to invest? And some of us think, okay, I think I know what investing is. Let me just put it simply. Investing means this, that each of you in a relationship, you have something to offer that the other one needs. And so you leverage what you have for the benefit of the other. But in a healthy relationship, it becomes mutual. It's not one-sided where one person's constantly receiving while the other person giving. It goes in ebbs and flows in seasons of life. You know, I remember years ago, the first small group I ever got into when I was in college. And it was two guys. They invited me. There's the word. They invited me and said, Mike, do you want to join our cohort? It wasn't the word we used back then, but that's really what it was. And they said, we're going to meet up on Thursday mornings at 8 o'clock and just hang out together, share each other, encourage each other, pray. I was like, I've never been a part of anything like that. Okay, it was really cool. I was like, they invited me and I went to that. Little did I know that within a year, I was going to lose my dad. And those are the guys I leaned on. And so when you talk about investing, it's this idea that, listen, we need each other. The Holy Spirit is going to speak through each other. There's going to be encouragement that God gives and love and compassion and strength and courage that we get from each other. Let me just read this out of Ecclesiastes because I think this really emphasizes this idea. Maybe you're familiar with it, especially if you've been to a wedding. This verse gets used a lot in weddings, but it's really in the context of friendship, which obviously can be for weddings as too, but let me just broaden it here. Ecclesiastes 4:9 says this, you are better off to have a friend than to be alone. We could just leave right there. It goes on to say this, because then you will get more enjoyment out of what you earn. You catch that sense? of like the language of investing, earning, and receiving and giving. He says, listen to this. If you fall, your friend can help you up. But if you fall without having a friend nearby, you are really in trouble. If you sleep alone, you won't have anyone to keep you warm on a cold night. Someone might be able to beat up one of you, attack, rob, but not both of you. As the saying goes, a rope made from 3 strands of cord is hard to break. When you think about that for a moment, I read that passage, years ago, and it says, a friend is better than being alone. It makes sense, but it talks about, listen, there's more enjoyment when you're able to share your resources. There's this sense of like, I'm not just a hoarder. I don't just make a living. I don't just live this life where it's all about me, 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 me. In fact, if I have anything, there's a joy that comes from being able to bless and share that with my friends. And then there's going to come a time when I might need something, and they're able to share it. Listen, in the U.S., we are westernized in our spirituality, and we idolize this lone approach to spiritual formation. We kind of think it's noble to be this sort of isolated, self-reliant person. That is a sham. Anybody that thinks they can go through life without needing anybody, that's pride, that's ego, it's just living a lie. The reality is we desperately need each other. And it's okay to say that. A lot of times, especially let me just pick on the men. For most of us as men, I don't need help, I'm good. Bro, you need some help. You need to be the first one to acknowledge that. It's okay to say, listen, like in this season of my life, I need to lean on you. And I love that it uses the illustration of the 3 chords. Because years ago when I read that, I went, okay, 1 + 1 does not equal 3. Anybody ever done that math before? It talks about if you're alone, but you have one, and they're like, well, maybe a third person joined the party. I have no idea. That's not what it means here. This is the context of that you have one person, another friend, and the third one's actually the presence of God. That's actually the third person represented here. Oh, which by the way, represents the Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit. Because if God exists in community and we are created in his image, how much more are we designed to live in that same expression? So let me just show you a few ways that we can be practical and intentional in investing with each other. I'll just put the list up here and then we'll give you a discussion question. We invest by sharing value. How many of you love to feel this sense of, I feel valued? Wow, we all long to find a part of community where, man, I feel valued here, or they see value in me. We crave value. Well, you get that and you receive that when you're in community. Number 2 is this, we invest by sharing time. It takes time to see that relationships can grow and nurture. You have to cultivate. That's why we use that word. Number 3 is this, we invest by sharing resources. I've talked about that. Number 4, we invest by sharing love with each other. Love is what Jesus talked about. Greater love has no one than a friend who lays down their life for the other. It's sacrificial. The next one is this, we invest by sharing truth. We need people in our lives to speak truth. I am who I am today. I'm 40, and you fill in the blank number. I'm 47. And I look back over my life, and I will tell you this, I have had key men and women in community all through my life that God spoke truth through them that, oh my goodness, I wish I could tell you how many times I would have driven my life off the path. We needed to speak truth in love over each other. That wisdom comes from godly counsel. And the last one up here is we invest by sharing experiences. I always like to think of it as this adventure that we're on together. So here's what we want to do. I'm going to put up a question right here. This is your next discussion question. Here's what it is. What example can you share in your group when someone made an investment in your life, and how did you benefit from that? All right, we'll leave that question up there. You guys can turn and discuss for another 5 more minutes. All right, I'm going to interrupt you guys again one more time. We're going to cover our third portion of being an intentional friend. We talked about inviting. We just talked about what does it mean to invest. And the last one we're going to talk about is what does it mean to inspire? Oftentimes we think of the word inspire, and we think of an inspiring person as someone who's eloquent, someone who lives this life in a way where we kind of go, oh, wow, that's inspiring. Look how they're overcoming obstacles, and look how they're overcoming those challenges. Look what they've accomplished. We go, that's inspiring. There's some truth to that. An inspiring person, yes, lives an extraordinary life. To some extent, I don't think we actually use the word correctly. You know, the word inspire is a word that means to breathe on. That's what it means. Inspire means to breathe on something. That's what the word inspire means. It's the best picture you can come up with that describes that is the idea of making a fire. And if you've ever made a fire before, you've probably seen the embers get really small, and sometimes you'll see the wind even pick up around you, and it will actually stoke the flame. And what was kind of maybe just some little tiny embers, and it was just kind of glowing a little bit, all of a sudden it rages now, and it gets bigger and larger and more impactful. And that's what wind does. Wind takes something, breathes on it, and its potential is realized as something greater. When Jesus looked at his disciples and he said, "You will do greater things," he was breathing on them inspiration. Inspiration and being an inspiring person has less to do with living this extraordinary life. It's actually helping others live their extraordinary life. You want to be an inspiring person, help other people be great. That's what it means to be an inspiring person. So from now on, when we say, "Man, you're so inspiring," it's less look at me, what I've accomplished, more like look at how you're helping other people accomplish great things. That's actually the word inspiring. And so when you talk about that in the context of friendship, it means like I'm going to partner with the breath of the Holy Spirit so that the words I speak, what I'm doing is I'm fanning into flame the potential in somebody else. We all need that in the context of community. Let me just show you what it looks like practically. We talk about this idea of inspiring. It means this: we inspire by celebrating. You know, when someone comes to your community group or friendship, or you're hanging out for coffee, or you're playing a round of golf, and you're together as friends, and you share like, "Hey, this last week this thing happened," and they're like, "Man, that's awesome. That's amazing. I want to celebrate that with you." That's inspiring. What you're doing is you're breathing life on that person. You're stoking in them something that is potentially great inside of them, and you're excited. A lot of friends usually go the opposite direction, and they're jealous and envious. A lot of unhealthy friends want to shut down the potential in other people because they're jealous of that. But a good friend seeks the greatness in others and does everything you can to fan that into flame. I want to celebrate. I'm going to applaud. That's amazing. You can do that. Another one way that we inspire is by empowering someone. Empowering means, listen, I'm trusting you. I'm going to empower. I'm going to do everything I can to see that you're leading. I'm going to give you the reins on this thing. I'm going to let you take the lead on this. And there's something about inspiration when you empower other people that what you're saying to them is, look, listen, you're going to make some mistakes. I'm not saying that when you're empowered, you're going to be perfect. But I believe that when you step up and you take a swing at something, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that, what you're saying is, I'm for you. And then when they get up to do that, that's empowering. How many of you know, have you ever tried something scary and new in your life? But you had someone like there just like, "Man, I'm so with you." Like, that's empowering, right? Another one is this affirming. Affirming is so inspiring. Man, I see this in you. You know, you're actually really good at that. I just want to highlight you. I just want to acknowledge you. Man, I don't know if you've ever explored this, but boy, you sure have a knack for this. I just want to know that every time I see this in you, I just want to call this out in you in a good way. I want to highlight that about you. Man, have you thought about doing something more with that? Man, I want to affirm you in that. I want to affirm you in the direction you're going with that. That's inspiring. Another way is promoting. Promoting is this: it's whatever I can do to leverage my influence in your direction. Everybody here has influence. Everybody here has influence, some of us more than others. But when you promote others, you're like, man, how do I take my platform? How do I take my influence? How do I take my key relationships? And I want to promote my friend. I want to do everything I can to use what I have to help their influence grow, help their potential grow. Another way that we inspire, again, is by elevating them. I'm gonna take the back seat. You get the limelight. I'm gonna be back here. I'm gonna be the fan cheering you on. I'm gonna let you step up to the front. And the last one here, again, is just by encouraging. I know encouraging, we often think of as like, how are you doing? You know, hang in there. But the word courage is in encouraging. One of the most incredible ways we inspire others is to be a voice of courage. Like, I want you to go step into that. I know it's scary. I know it's hard. It might be like, hey, I'm gonna encourage you to do the right thing that maybe isn't comfortable, but man, I want to encourage you that I think it's the best thing, and I'm gonna be there with you. If it's hard, I'm gonna help you through that. We can encourage each other, be with each other through those hard times. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna turn and discuss the last question, which is this: when did you feel someone believed in you and they empowered you to do something positive in your life? Why don't you share that with each other? I'll be back up here in 5 minutes. Well, I'm going to bring us back together as we close the service. And let me ask you a question. How many of you, that was a lot better than maybe you thought it was going to go? Let me ask you another question. As we talk about what does it mean to be an intentional friend that invites, that invests, and inspires, as we broke that down today, how many of you, in all honesty, would go, I would love to have a friend that did that with me? All of us crave to be invited in. All of us crave that somebody's investing, pouring, sharing with us, and inspiring us. And here's my advice. You only get out of relationships what you put into them. What you want so badly, start by doing that for others. The Bible has this principle that you reap what you sow. And so as you sow into relationship, is it risky? Is it messy? Absolutely. Does it mean that times you're pouring in and the return on that is betrayal? 100%. All of those things are true, but I'm here to tell you that if you look over the course of your life, the more that you say, I want to apply these principles and I want to pour into other people, it's amazing how you will reap the benefits that what you want for your own life by sowing into others, God brings the return back into your own life. So I want to encourage you, if you're here, that just take that step and say, how do I apply these principles to friendships around me? Those that don't even go to church. Imagine those who are sitting out there, non-believers, people that don't go to church are aching for someone to say, I want to invite you, not just to church. I'm talking about inviting into relationship. I want to invest in you. I want to help inspire you. We all long for that. And I just want to say thank you for playing along this morning. And I think we did more than that. I think we created space for the Holy Spirit to work. That's one of the things we're passionate about here is everything we do is let's create a space for the Spirit of God, the presence of God. We talked about this a few weeks ago when Paul said to have community in the Spirit. That when we just turn chairs like this, it might seem like, oh, okay, that's easy, but the Spirit of God moves in times like this. And here's what we're going to do in the next week or so. I just want to give you an update on that. So next week, we're going to take what we practice here, but now we're doing it into homes. We're going to kick it up a notch. And next week, we're going to talk. There's going to be resources online. We've already got those things prepared for you guys, worship and teaching. We got discussion questions. We've got it all ready for you guys. But here's where you can partner with us. Number one is this. If you're like, man, I want to get into a home next week. I want to experience more of what we had today. I don't really know people that are intentional in the same way, relationships where Jesus is at the center. Is there one way I can get plugged into that? I'm new here. I don't really know. Absolutely. We have signups in the lobby. There's a QR code. You can just scan that into your phone and sign up for one of those host homes and you can show up there. But I also want to encourage you, if you're here and you're like, hey, we already got a group of friends. Absolutely. We told you this, that you can just get your circle of friends next week together in your home. Maybe it's another family or another group. Organically, we love that. If you just want to gather them, meet in your home next week, we love that. But here's what we want you to ask of you. If you're doing that, could you let us know? Because here's why. We have resources for you. We want to make sure you get all the uploads. We want to make sure you get all the information. So if you're planning on hosting next week and it's just kind of organically you and friends and family, we love that. But what we need you to do is let us know. So on your way out, there's a table. Matt and Jen are out there. It'll take you literally like 30 seconds. Just say, hey, we're hosting next week in our home. Make sure we get the resources and everything that's going to be happening. We don't want to miss out on that. So make sure you do that on your way out. So you can either sign up or let us know that you're already planning on hosting. Now, here's what's funny. Next week is a big challenge, right? We're moving into homes. We're not meeting in this amazing space because we're trying to turn up the dial on community. And I know for some people, they're like, wow, this is really risky. Guess what's happening 2 weeks after that? The same thing. It's called the Super Bowl. It's amazing how naturally we'll do that with athletes at the center of the stage, but we won't do it with Jesus at the center of the stage. That's a good one to just kind of drop it right there on that one. We're going to worship now. All right.